the story is trying to tell this difference in ideologies, but it's doing it in in the veil of a superhero story. So them being superheroes is almost second to the actual story of this old school mentality versus this new age technological way of doing things. That is really like the main focus. And at least this story right now, where it's looking at the end of this person's career, doesn't really need an origin story. I'm not opposed to doing one if I can think of something that's super interesting. I wouldn't just do it just to do it. I'd also want to tell like an interesting story.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. I am Lutch, your host, and today we are going to be talking about with Eric Locsh about his graphic novel, I believe, entitled The Night Howler. This is something a little different. I'm not sure if it's a comic or if it's a graphic novel, but I do know that it is not a typical, it's not just prose. So a book's a book, right? So I didn't read it, so it works. This cover definitely has a an obvious Batman vibe to it. And I'm curious whether that is a sign that this might be a little bit tongue-in-cheek or a little bit of a play on Batman, or if it just happens to be something completely different, but similar dark colors. Who knows? But definitely, as far as a superhero, that it looks like, I would want. I mean, he's a little pudgy. Maybe we'll, there's a reason for that. But seems interesting enough if I'm looking for a superhero story. So aside from that, judging the book by its cover, I like it. So let's dive right in and read the back of the book. In part 1 of the Night Howler series, this is part 1. It makes a lot of sense that there would be, that this would be a series that, if it's a comic or a graphic novel, that it would have continuations. In part 1 of the Night Howler series, the Night Howler, the shriek in darkness, the cry of justice, step out into the well-worn boots of the Night Howler, an out-of-touch crime-fighting superhero well past his prime. Stuck in the current generation of cell phones and social media, can the Night Howler's old-school principles endure much longer? And with his young, tech-savvy sidekick seemingly poised to take on the mantle, how far will the Night Howler go in order to stay relevant and maintain his place on top? So I guess, again, looking at his midsection, not having the typical shape of a superhero, obviously we are in, that's explained he's a little bit past his prime. He's got his young sidekick. And that's an interesting concept. We, especially in like the MCU, which is really my only comic book frame of reference. I never really read comics growing up. I used to watch the X-Men TV show on like ABC or whatever it was, but I never really followed the lore of any comic book at all. So, and I didn't get into the MCU because I didn't realize that the lore of comics were in fact so deep and detailed. So yeah, everything that I'm going to have to say is going to be on the backdrop of the only comic stuff I know is, MCU, and I watched most of, or about half of The Walking Dead before it got terrible. And we've talked about that in previous episodes, so I don't have to dive too much into that here. But it's an interesting take on not necessarily the hero versus the villain, or the hero versus the public, and kind of that Spider-Man Batman thing where it's vigilante justice and we got to stop the vigilante. It doesn't seem like that is, at least in this part, the first part, it doesn't seem like that is a core conflict, but rather the conflict is that the Night Howler wants to keep the mantle and be the Night Howler when maybe it's a little, maybe it's time to pass it on. So I'm very interested in this story. Just from this little tiny thing, I am very, very interested because the given that I don't know a lot about comic book stuff, and the fact that I haven't really seen this type of conflict presented in this framework, I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. And given that this is part one of a longer series, we'll probably be able to get into plot points at least to some extent. And hopefully that, without giving any spoilers, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the actual story. It's, as much as that's not the point of this, to understand necessarily what is in the book. If you want to read the book, go buy the book. It's more about giving context to who is writing this book, why this book was written, what this book means to the author, all of those kinds of things. And often, the plot points of the book really aren't relevant to that aspect of the conversation. But the fact that this is a take on the superhero story that I haven't necessarily seen, or maybe I have seen it and I haven't understood it in that context. Who knows? Eric does. So without further ado, let's bring him in. All right, and there he is, Eric Locsh, is it?
Yes.
I'm terrible with names, so
you got it right on the first try.
That's the first time. Eric Locsh, and the author of The Night Howler. So would you, first question, would you categorize this as a graphic novel or a comic?
I would categorize it as neither, probably. Well, it's in the form of like a short story, but it's almost like a graphic novel or a comic turned into a short story.
Okay.
So there's no images
in
in the story, but it is written sort of like if you've read any comic books before, you have those panels where it says like pow or wham, or it's like that. The
cool
action is like all sounded out. Or it's all written out. So there is a little bit of that in the short story.
Oh, so it is written out as prose.
A little bit, yeah. A little like here, usually like in an action scene, or if something has to be like really like exemplified, or like with an exclamation, like there'll be like a pow if there's like a fight going on or something like that.
So how did you decide to on that format?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've kind of been experimenting a little bit in terms of like my writing genre, because I have like a few published works. One of them's like a young adult coming of age fantasy story. Another is a like dark humor, like chef meets post-apocalyptic world story. And now I have this one, which is like this anti-hero, aging superhero story. So I've just kind of been like experimenting and trying to find like, what is my niche? What is my genre? What do I enjoy writing the most? What do people enjoy reading the most? So yeah, and also like comic books and comic book stories and comic book movies and TV shows are just really, really popular right now. So I thought, why not try my hand at that and try something that at least I haven't seen.
That was something that I specifically noticed, that it for a superhero story, it seems to not, at least for this issue, the first one, it seems not to necessarily be about the hero versus the villain, or the hero versus society, or but rather the hero and the conflict within his own group with his sidekick. And so that was a really cool thing that I don't know that, I mean, it's touched upon in like, and again, I very limited references for this
Mhm.
type of content. So virtually everything is going to be in reference to the MCU, but you can see how, you know, I mean, Civil War was an amazing movie. But it was, you know, that I would assume that it's very different than this type of, that was a very big scope
Mhm.
of conflict. Whereas this concept of, you know, aging guy, not, you know, a little past his prime, not really keeping up with the current
Times.
times, and having this sidekick who's ready to go. That's an interesting perspective of
Mhm.
superhero stories that I hadn't heard of before.
Mhm.
So what inspired the whole the Night Howler himself?
Mhm. Well, the Night Howler himself is, you know, as with anything, I'm sure like almost every writer can attest to, is that when you write something, you inject parts of yourself into that character, like whether purposely or like by accident. So the character of the Night Howler really came to life in my head like about a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, when there was a lot of like unrest going on outdoors, and everybody was kind of like had to stay at home, and there was a lot of stuff, a lot of you know,
Peaceful
just,
protests.
yes, a lot of a lot of peaceful protests going on all over the country, I think. And you know, I had like two schools of thought in my head, where, you know, one side of me was this sort of young hopeful guy who was like thinking that this can be good, this can inspire change, this can, you know, that's just the hopeful side of me.
Something to rally around.
Something to rally around, something to try to take away like some positives about this, like, oh, you know, people uniting for a cause. But then there's the grumpy boomer side of me as well. That is like, these dang kids, so like they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're talking about, or this is just their excuse to leave their homes, and they're all just really bored, and, you know, just like the cynical grumpy side of me. And it's tough when you have those like two schools of thought going on at the same time, because
Right.
you don't know which side of the fence to lean on. So I thought, well, actually, that would be kind of cool. What if there was a tag team of superheroes, where, you know, one side was the hopeful side and the other side was this like grumpy like boomer kind of side. You know, both parts that kind of are part of me as well. So I thought it would be a great like telling it in a superhero story would be a really interesting thing, because it could be a very touchy subject, and it could be like,
For sure.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows. But under the veil of a superhero story, I can kind of talk about it or present it in ways that doesn't make people angry, or if it does, it makes them angry at this like fictional superhero.
Right. A little more palatable.
Yeah, a little more palatable. And I can more freely write to like this like the negative nature of like one character, or like
Right.
the hopeful positive nature of another character, and they both have their faults, they both have their point of views. Some are right, some are wrong.
Instead of writing like a nonfiction story about these people and saying you're doing this,
yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so I got strong Batman vibes from the cover. I was that intentional?
Yeah, Batman is one of my favorite superhero characters, because I just love how like human he is. But he has so many like layers to him, and he like really puts his body on the line, and just really cares about his city and like the place that he grew up in. And I don't know, I just find him like so interesting. He's like you know, he tries so hard, he doesn't even have like superpowers.
Right. Yeah.
He's
It's just,
he has to be smart, he has to be resourceful, he has to rely on like, you know, local authorities, he has to like build relationships with people. He can't just fly around and punch someone in the face and they just fly across the, you know.
yeah. And even with all that money, it's still, a pile of money isn't going to do anything. You've got to know what to do with it. And I think that's the appeal that a lot of people have. I mean, if everyone's favorite, if it's not Batman, it's either Spider-Man or Superman. But I think Batman's probably the most common favorite superhero for those reasons, that he is, just not a normal guy, but in the context of superheroes, he's just a regular human. He doesn't have any special powers. He doesn't have anything like that, and he uses his money, which he doesn't have to do, to do what he thinks is right. And so is that the same type of character that the Night Howler is, where he's he doesn't have powers, but he has other resources that he can use? Like,
so I
what's on his utility belt?
It's on his utility belt. He has some like high-tech gadgets. On his utility belt, he has like I mean, they're not the most creative tools, but they're tools that I kind of reverse engineered his utility belt. So I would just write scenes, and then I would say, okay, how does he like sneak into this place? Well, he needs X tool. So I'm like, okay, let me create this tool that like he needs to sneak into a building. So he needs to be able to like slice, a window, or slice the lock off a window. So yeah, well, yeah, that'll be really funny. I gave him like a laser pointer thing that can actually like cut through glass or cut through like materials. He also has, I kind of borrowed from Christopher Nolan's Batman in I think
the best Batman.
The best Batman, yeah. I think the second movie, he has this like kind of compound rifle thing that can shoot. It shoots like a goo kind of thing, and it explodes. There's like a timer on it and it explodes. So I kind of borrowed that a little bit, but my goo does not explode. It just sends out like a EMP that just deactivates all the electronic devices, deactivates cameras, so he can kind of like sneak around so nobody can find him.
And he doesn't have any supernatural abilities? No,
he's just a guy. He's just a guy, and as you pointed out on the cover, he is an overweight guy. And in the story, when he takes off his suit, he's overweight. He's kind of balding a little bit. So he's kind of reaching the end of his prime as a superhero. But he can't let go of that spotlight for a multitude of reasons. One reason is because it's anyone who's had power can attest that it's hard to let go of that power.
Definitely.
And those in power usually want more power. And and it's like he's also going through kind of like a midlife crisis kind of thing. So who wants to let go of that position when they're going through that kind of thing? And then there's also the whole aspect of this changing generation around him. These like young kids who are, they're more fit, they're more tech savvy, they're smarter, they have more connections. And he's kind of trying to show them up and trying to like show that his way of doing things, the old school way of doing things, is the right way.
Gotcha.
So, and that's kind of exemplified in his sidekick, who is everything he isn't, and is way better at everything.
And what's the sidekick's name?
So the sidekick's name is Prince Vulture.
Prince Vulture.
Yeah, I try to get a little creative with these names. I thought the Night Howler was already kind of close to like the Dark Knight, Night Howler, Dark Knight. So I was like, okay, I need to be a little more creative with like the rest of these character names.
Definitely. And so he Prince Vulture doesn't have any powers either, right?
No, there's no actual like superpowers.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like superheroes in the story. But he is very well connected, very tech savvy. He can often find where villains are a lot faster than the Night Howler, because he has connections on Twitter, on like TikTok and Instagram, and like people DM him or send him videos. I mean, they both work with the police, but he's just able to get places and know things a lot faster because he's
I can
connected to
imagine a
the
scene
internet.
where the Night Howler's like talking with the cops, like, we gotta find this, and Vulture's just like, oh, I just pulled it up right here.
Yeah, I mean, that's
God
pretty
damn it.
that's pretty accurate. That's like almost one for one what happens.
Oh,
Yeah, in the story, more or less. You know, there's also like a scene, not to like spoil it, but there's a scene like near the end where the Night Howler is sort of engaging with like this villain, and he thinks he's going to like take all the glory. He's like, I'm going to stop this guy, and then before he realizes it, like, you know, Prince Vulture is like on the scene already. He's like, God damn it! Like I wanted glory for this. Like, what the hell? And then, you know, the struggle ensues, and it's really about like how far would a person go to stay on top? Somebody who projects themselves as being for good and being for justice, you know, but it's like, what would they do to like keep that? And you know, not everybody's perfect. Even people that say they fight for truth, or they say they fight for justice, or they fight for you know, protecting everybody, like they're still human,
right.
You know, and sometimes there's like a dirty side to that.
Right.
You know?
And so is this like in the first issue, are you laying out an origin story, or is that something that you're going to bake in throughout the series?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so this is going to be a 3-part series, and I think there's potential to do an origin story. This is not an origin story. I kind of took like the Star Wars approach, I guess, where like, I don't know if George Lucas intended for prequels when he first created like the first Star Wars, but it's technically episode 4, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was like created first.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of taking like that approach. So this would be like, if there were like a whole bunch of issues of comic books, this would be like towards the end of like of his like saga or his career.
Right.
So all his relationships are established. You're kind of just like diving head first into like the end of this person's career.
Interesting. So
yeah.
do you have his origin story you know, fleshed out?
I have it somewhat pictured in my head and like, you know, written down a little bit. I don't have like all the intricate details.
So what's the elevator pitch of who the Night Howler is and why he became a vigilante justice seeker?
Yeah, that is a great question. And if I don't answer that, I'm going to seem like a fraud.
No, I mean, hey, you know, it clearly the angle that you're taking by diving in with you know, him being long in the tooth and past his prime is it makes it, at least gives me the impression that the origin story is probably, if you're into the Night Howler series, something that you would be interested in, but isn't central to the story and isn't central to the themes of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, I wouldn't say that, you know, if you don't have this all fleshed out, that, you know, like you don't have to, not everybody has to be a George R.R. Martin with every little detail picked out. But, you know, just out of like, I mean, you know, what was he doing before he was a superhero, or before he was a Night Howler?
Yeah. Well, so I guess I'm still figuring a lot of that out. Because I mean, to be honest, this story, like I said, it came about like a year or two ago. So I've just really been focusing on like this slice of like his life. And right now, to me at least, I'm more interested in like who he has become as opposed to like who he was, which is that's definitely something that like I'm going to figure out and like want to figure out. I was thinking about toying around with like like I wasn't sure if I wanted him to have like, parents who are like together, parents who are separated, parents who are alive or dead. The only origin story that I had in my mind, which does need a little more fleshing out, but I was thinking of like he has like a mother, and his father is either not in the picture or is like not a good person or something like that, and he's like away on a camping trip with his mother, and something like bad happens there on this camping trip where like there's like I don't know, like somebody in the woods that does something really terrible to her, and he's like really young and powerless to stop her, and after everything is kind of said and done and this like horrible thing happens to his mother, all he can hear is like the cooing of like a owl in the distance.
Oh, that's cool.
Something like that. So he like adopts this this moniker and then decides to fight for people that can't stand up for themselves, kind of thing.
Cool.
So that's kind of where I'm starting out. I want to flesh it out more, so it's a little more. I want to make it like as less cliche as possible.
Yeah. And again, the way that you talk about it, again, I'm kind of reiterating, but again, it does seem like what you're focusing, because we've seen every thinking of Spider-Man, we've seen every iteration, or Spider-Man and Batman, every movie that comes out has to go through the origin story, whether it's the Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed in the alley or the Uncle Ben thing. But with the MCU, they just dove right in, because even though we already know that character specifically, even if we didn't, the concept of an origin for a hero is really only going to be so different. I mean, unless it is something super unique, we can assume that it's some type of thing that happened that changed the way the hero sees the world and feels like they need to do something about it. And so focusing on an aspect of that crime fighting life that I personally haven't seen before, the tail end of the career. I think that is, I don't think it needs necessarily an origin story to achieve what it seems like you're trying to achieve. I think the at least for this issue, it sounds like the interpersonal things are really at the heart of it, and the superhero stuff is more of just a backdrop. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Like I was saying, like I'm trying. The story is trying to tell this difference in ideologies, but it's doing it in like in the veil of a superhero story. So them being superheroes is almost second to the actual story of this old school mentality versus this new age technological way of doing things. That is really like the main focus. And to what you were saying, like at least this story right now, where it's looking at the end of this person's career, doesn't really need an origin story. I'm not opposed to doing one if I can think of something that's super interesting. I wouldn't just do it just to do it. I'd also want to tell like an interesting story as well.
I think that a bad origin story would be worse than no origin story, especially if what you're focusing on. So I definitely agree on that. So then what is it that you are trying to convey about this dichotomy, the old school versus new school, that plays out in this context?
What am I trying to achieve?
What is this really about? It's not really about an old guy who used to be this great hero and now he's on the tail end of his career. It's really about
can't we all just get along? No, it's a lot about the current times that we're in right now, where it's like if you are not plugged in, if you're not connected, if you don't adhere to like the current school of thought, then you are kind of seen as the enemy, or the other, or you're doing things wrong. Whereas the other side they also have the same school of thought. It's just towards towards the other side, where they're like, oh, you're too plugged in, you're too young, you don't know what you're talking about, that sort of thing. So the message of this story, at least this first issue, because it's broken up into like three different issues. So the first one is where these two ideas come to a head. The second is sort of the aftermath and like the dust settling. And then the third is hopefully trying to bring these two sides together, if it's even possible. But yeah, that is like the main point of this first story is to kind of show like what can happen if these two sides are unable to work together or live together. And you can't just get rid of one side. Like you just like older, if I could just break it down to like older people and younger people, let's just say like older people can't get rid of younger people just because they disagree, and younger people can't get rid of older people just because they disagree. So they have to work together. We have to work together.
Figure out a way to make it work.
Figure out a way to, because we all want the same goal at the end of the day. And in the context of superheroes, they both want the same thing. You have the superhero and the sidekick. They both want the same thing. They both want to stop the villains. They both want to save people, but the way they go about it and the way they view life and the way they view how to fight crime and how to do all this stuff is completely different. But you can't, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that sounds very much like the you know, culturally and politically what we find ourselves in, and you know, the fact that, you know, you have one side thinking that this is the way it is, and anybody who doesn't think this is, like you said, an enemy, and the other side basically having the same sentiment, just about different opinions. And again, like you said, for the most part, we all really do want the same good things and the same outcome, but it's more about the intricacies of how we get there and how we you know, first identifying what problems are in fact problems, or what things are not problems, and then once the problems are not only identified but agreed upon, then how do we go about solving them? So I think that's a very poignant message, and I think that is something that's lost on too many people, that they are in one camp or the other. Oh, and it doesn't even have to be political. It doesn't have to be Democrat, Republican. It doesn't any of that stuff. But just, you know, it could bring it down to sports or something.
Yeah.
And you know, having you know, if you're a Patriots fan, then you're simply always going to think that the Giants are terrible, and vice versa.
Right.
And you both like football. You both want an entertaining game. But that tribalism is not gonna, you know, you're and obviously that's a very innocuous example, and people aren't you know, killing each other over NFL games. But
you'd be surprised.
But definitely when it, you know, you take that same concept and bring it to cultural issues and political issues, you know, people can get heated, and it is very important for, you know, this is something that seems to come up in virtually every episode, or virtually everything I do, is
Really?
stressing that message that, guys, we've got to be able to communicate. We've got to be able to have a discourse, and even not only even if we disagree, but especially because we disagree, we need to find the, you know, how to figure this out.
Yeah, and you know, for me, part of writing this thing was a little therapeutic in a way, because I often have like disparaging thoughts within my own head. Like I think one way and I'm like, well, is that really the right way? And then I think the other way. Well, I'm like, it's like, screw that. Like, what am I thinking? You know? So I often also have these like tug of wars in my head, because I think I know the right way, or I think I have the right idea for like of an issue, or I have like the right solution for an issue. And I don't know. I hear one side, I agree with them. I hear the other side, I agree with them. So I don't know, or I
but
disagree.
that's what makes you among the people who are trying. And the fact is, nobody has all the answers.
Mhm.
Nobody has a perfect solution to creating a utopia. Nobody. And so all we can do is take in information from the best to the best of our ability and apply that and try. And again, that seems to be something that isn't real. That used to be just what you do. That's how you engage with the world. You watch this news station and that news station, and you talk to your friends, and you put all that together, and you have your own ideas, and then you come out with a position or a conclusion.
Mhm.
But it seems a lot more lately that it's just been a matter of, well, my side says this, so that's the answer. And if you disagree, then you're a bad person and
Then
you're
I hate
evil.
you.
And right. And that's not helpful. Even if you are right,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and it's that point exactly, which even made me more like compelled to write this, because I see that happening a lot around me. I mean, I think everybody can see that around them happening the last few years. And listen, I've been guilty of doing the same thing too, where I'm very rigid. I stick to whatever it is I believe. And then, a day later, whatever, I'm like, why was that? Why am I so like, why am I acting that way? Like, I shouldn't be acting that way. I should be like,
so sorry to interrupt your podcast experience. I just want to remind you, if you're enjoying what you're watching, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And if you really love it, there's some support links in the description. I would love if you could help out the channel. And back to the show.
open with everything, but admittedly, like, it can be hard.
Definitely.
To always be open and listening to both sides about everything, especially when you have a lot of people who don't take the time to do that, who just want to just kind of just give in and have think for me, decide for
Absolutely,
me.
yeah.
So,
and then not only that, but then you have bad faith actors who are trying to push a narrative and will obfuscate reality to get you to believe certain whatever it is they want you to believe. And as someone who is pretty deep in the weeds of day-to-day goings on, particularly like with the culture war and the how the wokeism is and all that kind of stuff is really taking on a life of its own and starting to have bigger and bigger negative effects on people's lives, as opposed to being a tool for just accountability. And I hear that a lot from people in that camp, that it's not cancel culture, it's just accountability culture. And it's like, well, no, because we already had a certain level of accountability, and definitely there was areas where we needed more accountability. Like, you're not going to hear me defending like a Weinstein or a Cosby or anything like that. But
right.
When it comes down to things like, just the other day, the Business Insider wrote this hit piece on Dave Portnoy of
I heard about
Barstool Sports, and he went through and showed that it was straight up libel or slander, libel. I always mix it.
One of the two.
But it wasn't because of the way that they worded it, but that makes it more insidious, because then they know that what they're dancing around. They never said like he committed SA or the RPA, but see, I knew it would come up eventually somehow. But that's clearly what they're insinuating, and they are just allowed to do that because they're not specifically saying you did X, Y, and Z. And that's just one example of how the quality of discourse has just gone down the drain. And so if people can read your work and see that see these things in a different context, that really has the power, I think, to change minds and not be something that is trying to attack people's way of thinking, whether it's right or wrong. If you hate other people because they don't agree with you, then being chastised for that isn't likely to help you change your mind. Like my dad always says, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And so being persuasive is an important part of this whole, just being a part of a society. You need to be able to communicate, and that's really cool. And so the with this, what I guess if the series isn't so much focused on the Night Howler fighting the bad guys, and more on the what's going on between him and Prince Vulture, what kind of because so far what we've been talking about is Vulture being able to one up Night Howler by just being more tech savvy. But you were saying how it kind of goes both ways, and there is merit to the old school mentality in certain circumstances. And so what's like an example of something where Night Howler gets up on Prince Vulture because he's got the old school mentality? Or a hypothetical example that would be like what Night Howler would do.
Yeah.
Don't want to give away all the goods, but
yeah. I'm trying to think of like I'm trying to think in the book. So you're asking like a scenario where the Night Howler's way of doing things is like the correct way of doing things.
And specifically that the Night Howler is maybe not the right versus wrong, but the approach that the Night Howler would take is more effective and more appropriate. And Prince Vulture is like, no, we can do this. We can just Google it, and it turns out not to be that simple, or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think in this case, the Night Howler's approach to fighting crime is like more methodical. So he's just kind of like, we take on these things like one at a time, or like we go for like, you don't just go for broke. You don't just like go and just try to corral like Prince Vulture just wants to do everything in one night, which can be done and is possible, but you need to like the resources that you need to mobilize an entire police force, or to get everybody out all over the city to capture all these criminals all at the same time. The logistics of it is not really like thought through. So I get the Night Howler thinks more like methodically, like, okay, we take down this criminal tonight. It'll cost us this much money, or like it'll take this much time, or we'll have like X amount of police forces with us. Whereas Prince Vulture just kind of wants to do it all in one shot, and he just like, let's just put all the criminals in like let's put them in one cell. Let's just put them all together. We got them all, And Night Howler said, well, like, wait a second, like we should process these people like one at a time. That way, we put them on individual cells or what, So it's like methodical versus like everything all at once.
So that sounds very much like a metaphor for a more innocent and naive way of looking at the world and saying, oh, we can just fix it by doing this, we can just do that, and then versus the what that person would see as a more cynical view, which like, it doesn't work like that, it's not that simple, we can't just do that.
And a lot of that there is a level of naivete, I guess, with Prince Vulture, because he does have this very large, if you can imagine, like if like a TikTok influencer becomes a superhero, that's essentially who this guy is. So if you can imagine, he has all this like support, behind him where people like tell him like, yeah, you go for it, go do it, like you got this, you know, like you're the better superhero, like go get these criminals kind of thing.
Hashtag Team Vulture.
Hashtag Team Vulture. Yeah, there is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of you know, Prince Vulture shoving his phone in Night Howler's face, being like, well, look how many followers I have. Like, he's like, yeah, how many followers do you have? Like no one likes you anymore.
And so how old are they, or what's like the age difference between Howler and Vulture?
Yeah, so Night Howler is I have the exact age written down. He's like in his mid to late 40s, like 47, something like that. And Prince Vulture is, I believe, 22 or 23 or something like that. Okay. So almost half his age.
Interesting.
Yeah, so but I wanted to keep it in line with like the way, like it's like there's like a generation gap, which you could see nowadays. Like my parents, for example, like they don't know certain terms. Technology is like a lot of technology is lost on them. I mean, they know how to use their phone and stuff, but like a lot of stuff is kind of lost on them. And you know, for me, it's like super easy. But then there's another generation that's even younger than me, and they do things that I don't even know how to do. I thought I knew everything in terms of like social media and how things function. Apparently, there's a whole world of things I do not know. Like especially now, just like me as an author trying to promote myself like on these different platforms. Like I just recently begrudgingly got into TikTok.
I knew you were gonna say that. I'm waiting. I haven't done it, and
I don't recommend it.
No, good. I'm gonna take that as my reasoning. So just you know, it's a whole new thing, and I'm gonna be 32 this month. And it's like I don't. Oh, cool.
Well, I'm already 32, but yeah.
Nice. So we're right in that generation where you know, the very not even generation, but a slice of our generation where, you know, we grew up with these electronics and the internet and all that stuff, but it developed along with us. So, you know, when we were kids, there was no internet. We had video games, you know, and all that stuff, and we had 24-hour cable and all that. Yeah.
Had a beeper.
But this current iteration of just being plugged into you know, social media 24/7 and having your entire life being done, that wasn't the way that we grew up. But as it was being introduced, people our age were the ones who were on the, you know, that we were the target demographic for MySpace when it came out. It was for us. And then, you know, as Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff came about, it was a natural progression. And now with TikTok, it's such a clear delineation between when I was one of the kids and now I'm the old guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've heard that, you know, because of the numbers and I don't know specifically, but the way the algorithm works, it's not that hard to get a lot of views. That's all. I don't really know much else about it, but so I've heard that it can be a very good platform for promotion, but I just and I'm like a social media addict. So and I know if I start a TikTok, I'm gonna be on TikTok all the time. I don't have time. I already don't have time to keep up with, you know, I have you know, the Instagram for IDRYB. I've got an Instagram for my dog training work at Adam the Puppy Whisperer, if you want to follow my puppy adventures. And then, you know, I've got my Twitter page and Facebook and Reddit and all these things. It's like I'm not like addicted to social media where I can't put my phone down, but there's just so much that, okay, if I'm just gonna check my messages here, check my notification, that's like a 2-hour process just to, you know. And so to add something in that's TikTok, I just I'm hesitant.
Yeah.
Were you on Vine?
I was on Vine. Yeah.
And I never did Vine, and I see that in the same kind of realm, and I just feel like, okay, well, I missed out on Vine, and I seem to be doing all right, so maybe I don't need TikTok. But
Yeah, Vine was like a great little innocent moment in time because it wasn't like trying to steal your information or like link to China or like whatever it is. It was just fine. It was just like, here's some like fun little, I think 7 seconds. I think it was 7 seconds. Yeah, here's some like fun little quirky 7-second videos. Have a great day. It's like, oh
yeah.
wow, Vine, like you're so nice. And then it just got like kicked in the face. I don't know what happened to Vine.
You know, it just speaks to how it's something, you know, this is why we can't have nice things, is because they didn't have a you know, a good business model. And even though the product was great, then you know, it just it didn't have the legs to continue, and they lost money.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
the way of the world, unfortunately.
yeah. Well, I you know, I didn't want to go on TikTok because I didn't want to see all these like prepubescent teens dancing to songs that like I couldn't care less about. I just did not want that to happen. And all these like dancing challenges and stuff, and I was just like roll my eyes.
Not to mention the whole owned by China thing and giving your information to China.
Yeah, there's also that too. But I've been watching a lot of people like in the writing industry and like successful authors and just stuff in like in that industry, and a lot of them do say that TikTok can be really good for authors to like get your name out there. And you know, I'm on Instagram and I use like Reels. You know Reels, right? Yeah. And like Reels are pretty good. But I just from everything I've just been watching, they say that there's like an untapped potential to get your name out with TikTok. So I was like, oh goddamn, all right, I guess I'll join it. So I'm on it. I'm technically on it. I'm not like, if I post something, I'll post it to Instagram and then I'll like repost it to TikTok, you know. So, and I'm trying to, because there's like an algorithm, so I'm trying to make sure the algorithm just feeds me like book related stuff. And like every time the moment I see someone like dancing, I just immediately just not interested.
Let them know how you really feel.
Yeah.
That was my other excuse for not being on TikTok. I was like, it's all Zoomers on TikTok. Like they're, you know, we're talking about books here. I don't know how what level of crossover that's going to be. And I mean, you know, I am looking to build the channel into more than that. And you know, have a real cultural relevance with what I'm doing. But obviously the podcast is my first step. And so for right now, it just seems like I don't know how many 17, 18-year-olds want to hear about people's books, regardless of what the book is.
Well, so I mean, that's where you would be surprised, because there are like an infinite amount of accounts that are just reposting books, their favorite books. There's like Book Talk, that's like the main hashtag that they use. It's just like an infinite amount of accounts that are recommending books and looking for recommendations and reviewing books. It's like insane. This is just like it's like intimidating to me. So
I guess I gotta take the plunge.
I mean, you know, at your own discretion. And I understand the not wanting to do it. I totally understand, because like I said, I have it and I'm still like barely on it. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to at least just create.
You got to go where the people are.
Your name, like, yeah, it's exactly what it is. You know, it's the only way. Like people really don't go out seeking a product. Like the product has to seek them.
Yep, everything is so, you know, targeted advertising. You don't need to seek things out, because they will shove it down your throat and be like, oh, okay, I guess I need this. And that can be a very, so yeah, I guess it's something that I'll have to dive into.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So you named the the first part the Shriek in Darkness. So what's the what's the significance of that?
Yeah, it's oh man, I'm trying to blank. It's the Shriek in Darkness. Is the cry of justice, the shriek of darkness. Yeah, that is like, Yeah, that is like his that is like the unofficial title of this first part. Again, another Star Wars reference. The original Star Wars is just called Star Wars, but after they came out with the other ones, they called it A New Hope. So this is the Night Howler, but when there are more, it will be called the Night Howler, the Shriek in Darkness, the Cry of Justice. So that is basically his like tagline, I guess. You know, Batman is the Dark Knight. That's like his kind of moniker that like followed like or like Superman. I think Superman's is
What is Superman? Like the
I think it's
incredible flying. I don't know.
something, yeah, something like that. I'm drawing a blank right now, but that is basically like his moniker. So like if there's a character, there's like a villain, for example, in this first part, who kind of likes to mess with him. And he rather than calling him like the Night Howler, when he sees him, he's like, it's the Cry of Justice, the
Cool.
Shriek in Darkness. Like that is like his tagline. So that's kind of where that comes from. And it's also like owls kind of shriek in the dark kind of thing, and they're like Cry of Justice, like the cry of an owl. That whole thing.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
so what is the overall tone of this series? You know, you've got on one end of the spectrum, you've got like, you know, the Dark Knight, where it's very dark and but still you know, fits into that archetype of a typical superhero movie. And then I didn't see it, but you know, the Justice League Snyder cut, from what I understand, is a very different type of movie, or like I don't know if you've seen Eternals yet, but I just seen Eternals, and same kind of thing, where it's not really the typical good guy versus bad guy, and even though that is what's going on, you also have stories like Ant-Man, which is got a very lighthearted feel to it, and so what's the tone of the Night Howler? Is it more of a darker thing, or is it a little bit lighthearted, or is it a mix of both? Where are we on that spectrum?
It's definitely it's definitely a mix. It's more on the darker side, I would say, but it is very self-referential. It's a little tongue-in-cheek. It definitely is aware of the genre and kind of pokes fun at the genre. But it is all in service to it's all in service to the main character and the main theme of the story, which is this older superhero in this new young world. For example, there is one villain who this is like the kind of the opening of the story. He's, you know, wrestling with this villain on a rooftop, very classic comic booky kind of setting. But you know, this villain thinks he has Night Howler on the ropes, and he could just very well just take him out. But before he does that, he has to yell some kind of like you know, he has to like say
Some
his
cool
shtick.
line.
He has to like give his shtick.
Who's eating lead for dinner?
Yeah, yeah. So the character's the villain's name is Blackout. That's like the villain's name. So before he like punches Night Howler in her face, he's like, prepare for a blackout. And Night Howler's like rolling his eyes. He's like, seriously? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? And then he uses that time to get the upper hand and
funny.
Kick that guy's ass. So it is a little tongue in cheek. It knows what it is. It knows what it's doing, but it's all in service of, you know, this character who's like, yeah, I know what you're doing. Like, you're being really lame. Like, stop trying to be like a villain and like just be like the bad guy that you are. Like, why? Like, what's with the showmanship? You know. So there's a little bit of that, but it does at the same time like dive into these deeper topics that like we were discussing earlier, and and it's also has lots of action in it. There is like chases and like there's like aerial chases. He has like if you remember in like the third Christopher Nolan Batman movie, Batman had like that plane, the helicopter. That wasn't a helicopter, but it was like a flyer.
The jet, yeah.
The jet thing, yeah. So Night Howler has his own version of that. There's like a cool chase with that. So lots of action, themes that you and I spoke about, some cheekness. I don't even know if that's a word. But it mixes
Works
in
for me.
yeah, it mixes in a lot of these like different aspects. Because I think if I played it too serious, I think it might fall on deaf ears. Some people would be like, all right, like you don't have to shove. I'm not in the business of shoving an ideology or like schools of thought down people's throats. I kind of want them to, one, be entertained by what they're reading, and I want them to put themselves in the main character's shoes, and I want them to walk away with something, whether they agree, disagree with the main character, or if they are just questioning things in their own heads. I want them to walk away with something. But yeah, so it kind of mixes all these things in. That's in like a fun, enjoyable read. I hope.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. That you're looking to entertain first and foremost, because I have it's especially in literature, whether fiction or nonfiction. Obviously in nonfiction you are not looking to tell a story. You're looking to convey information, but even still, it doesn't matter how good the information is if you can't keep the attention of the reader. And I think that some people get too lost in the sauce, so to speak, of what the message they're trying to put out, and they put the entertainment factor on the back burner, and that is a fatal mistake, because they might have a great message, but if people aren't into it, then they're just not going to be into it. They're not going to want to keep reading, and so your message gets lost. So I think that's a very important, a small but important point, that remember what you're doing here is presenting somebody something that is supposed to entertain them over all else. And so if you can put meaningful messages into that, that's great, but you've got to entertain first and foremost. And it's just, even I'm thinking in other areas of art or performance. There's like bands who will want to put out a message in a song, and the message again can be great or not that great, but because the song isn't a good song, they forgot about that part, then it doesn't work. Or specifically, I'm thinking of stand-up comics. I'm a big stand-up comedy fan, and the whole idea of clapter, where the comedian will say something that they know will get an applause. It isn't funny, but it's just a thing that you can say that will elicit a reaction. And I've mentioned her before, so I don't like to pick on her, but it's too easy to make an example. Hannah Gatsby. Are you familiar?
I'm familiar with the name, but I don't know if I've seen anything.
She is she's an LGBTQ plus comic, and she, I believe, has 2 Netflix specials, and they're just like lectures on why the patriarchy, and there's, I'm not gonna lie, I chuckled a couple times, but it's like, even if this is even if I wanted to agree with this message, which I don't, but even if I did, then I can't engage with it the way that I want to, because I'm not entertained by it. And then you compare that to someone like Dave Chappelle, who has a very similar style, in the sense that he's not really telling jokes when he does his at least lately in his
telling
his
stories.
specials. Yeah, he's more telling stories and addressing real things, but he never lets the entertainment value become secondary. And the message is only as good as the piece is entertaining.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's something that gets lost on people, especially when they think they have a powerful message that they don't. You don't need to be laughing and blah, 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 blah. What I'm saying is important, so you need to listen. Like, well,
yeah. Well,
doesn't really work like that.
yeah. Well, it's like if you're a comic, first and foremost, you should be funny. And if you're not funny, then whatever the message is, whether it's agreeable or not, or I mean, everyone's gonna find, like, I'm sure some people agree with Hannah Gatsby stuff. I never heard anything she's ever said, but I'm sure lots of people agree with it. But like,
Well,
even if you're the kind of person that would like to agree with some things that she says, if it's not funny, then you're not gonna catch on, or like, it's not gonna catch on.
And to build on that, if you are entertaining, and again, I'm specifically talking about comics, but I think this goes for writing or podcasting, whatever else. Even a step beyond that, that even if you agree with them, they can't get the message because they're just bored. If you're entertaining, you don't even necessarily have to agree with the message because you're entertained by the content on its face. And so your reach for those who would agree with your message and those who need to hear your message, that reach goes farther because of the entertainment factor. So that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're entertained, yeah, you don't necessarily have to agree with like all of it or whatever it is somebody's saying, but if you're entertained, and at the very least, you're gonna like enjoy watching it or enjoy reading it in the context of like a story. So yeah, I mean, I judge the success of this and anything else that I write not based on like if somebody gets the message. I mean, that's always great if they get the message, if they get the point, but I'm just more interested in like, did you like it? Is it something you'd recommend? Something you'd want to read again? That's really something that's important to me. I mean, I think all fiction writers, if you're writing fiction, like there's a message in everything you're trying to write. It could be something as small as like save the bees, or I don't know, I guess that's like a big thing, or something as like big and heady as like this, like the culture war, and then like left versus right, or whatever it is. There's a message in like all fiction. So, but at the core, it has to be entertaining. It has to be entertaining, and it has to be well written. Otherwise, the other stuff, the message should work as like a
byproduct.
Yeah, or it's like the frosting, I guess you could say. I'm like a really, really well-made cake.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. I like that. And so I'm always interested in the, how you got into, like, what made you decide to do a book versus write a song or make a YouTube channel or any other way of sending out a message?
Well, I kind of suck at everything else. so writing is just the thing that comes the easiest to me, and it's also the thing that I enjoy the most. I mean, I've played some instruments before, like I could play the guitar. I'm not terribly good. I'm sure I could get good at it. I just don't have the patience or like the, with anything, there's I forget what it's like. There's like the amount of time you put into it, and then like the payoff.
Right.
So it's like the payoff has to feel good enough for the amount
to be worth it.
Yeah, for the amount of work that
the juice worth the squeeze.
Exactly. Yeah. So when it comes to anything that isn't writing, it just doesn't really feel worth it to me. Like, musical instrument or drawing or YouTube videos or podcasting or anything like that. But when it comes to writing, that's just something that for me, it feels, when I complete something and when it's written and it comes out the way that like I really wanted it to, that is like one of the most rewarding feelings that for me that I can get. And I feel like
intrinsic value, that's when you can find something that gives you that, it's very powerful. So was, you said you only wrote this over the last year or so. before that, were you planning on writing something and not sure what to write about? Were you what was the genesis of learning that this endeavor of writing could be so valuable to you?
Yeah. Well, so this isn't, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but this isn't my first, this ain't my first rodeo. I have two other, well, I have like a, so this Night Howler story is part one of a 3-part series, and they're like going to be short stories. So this first one is a short story. The second and third will be as well, but combined they'll make up like a pretty well-sized book. But I do have an actual full-fledged book that I have published.
What's that called?
It's called The Tower of Blue. That is the fantasy, this coming of age fantasy story that I mentioned earlier. So I have written and published a few things in the past. But this one came about before I wrote this. I didn't know what I wanted to write next. So like I wrote The Tower of Blue. I published that in 2019 or 2018. I think January of 2019. I published that then, and then I wrote like a novella, which is basically like a longer short story.
Right.
I wrote a novella. It's called Possum Stew, which is that dark humor, chef meets post-apocalyptic world story. And that one was just based on like I had an idea in my head, like what if you threw like Gordon Ramsay in like The Walking Dead, and like he had to survive on like all these horrible ingredients and like canned food and like just awful stuff, like
Filthy. This is
unfair. Yeah, and he would just like want to like kill himself, like he would not be able to survive. And
that's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's told in like a comedic way. So that's also just something I was like, I've been working on this book, The Tower of Blue, for like years and years and years, and I think I just really wanted to write something like completely different. So I kind of just like got that out of my system. But then after that, I have a whole list of ideas of stories that I want to write, and I kind of like fiddled around with like a few, and I wrote a little bit here, wrote a little bit there. One of them I was thinking of turning into like a script, and then I was trying to get into like script writing, and I was like kind of all over the place.
Now you're talking my language.
yeah. Well, what do you mean with scripts?
Well, just because I'm huge into movies and TV and stuff.
Yeah.
And I get most of my like real world information from YouTube videos and podcasts, and not from reading books, hence the podcast.
Yes, hence
yeah. So yeah, if Night Howler movie is coming out, I'll be the first. I'll buy the first ticket.
Hey, I mean, I will send you one for free if that's the case. But yeah, so then I was just kind of like dabbling with. I didn't know what to do. Like again, writing the Tower of Blue, it just been like, that was the first thing that I ever wrote and published, and that was just like a book that was just like within me from like my teenage years. So I just had to get out, and it took like years, but I had to get it out. And then once that was done, I'm like, okay, now what? Like, what do I do with like what do I do with my writing career? Because I know I want to have this writing career. I just don't know where. I don't know where to take it. Yeah. So I had this idea of I wanted to do some kind of superhero story. I didn't really know, and then all this stuff happened in the last like year and a half or last 2 years. And I saw this like division and craziness in the streets, and then it was just like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, this would be great, because I have this like dichotomy within myself. I don't know how to think about all this stuff. I mean, I have conflicting opinions within me. What if there was like a superhero that had the same thing, and then it just kind of took off from there. And now that I am remembering it, the story really like took inception when I was emailed from this like writing website, this like community of writers. They were issuing a short story challenge, and the challenge was to write and complete a 6,000 word short story in 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, this is a really great challenge, because it took me years to write my first book. So I said,
Right.
I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to see if I can write a whole short story in 2 weeks.
How'd it
And,
go?
and out came the Night Howler. And
Oh, cool.
I wrote it in 2 weeks, and then I submitted it, and they picked like 10 winners. Not to gloat, but they picked 10 winners, and
Hey.
my story was one of like the 10 winners that they picked. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah, gloat that shit, man.
yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it gave me the inspiration. I was like, okay, maybe I should keep going with this thing. So the short story got a little longer, then I completed it, and then now that's why I'm on to part 2 and part 3. So that's kind of where it all came about,
Gotcha.
you know.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on with Tower of Blue being, like everything that you've up until that point, that you want to write about. Because I mean, I would love to write a book. I feel that I best express myself in writing. And I mean, I can talk. I obviously I can do this. But there's a lot of ums and ahs
Same.
and it's I've gotten to a point where like I used to have a podcast that was it was audio only, but it was called the Aw Really podcast, like AWE, like oh wow. Um and early on I would go through, and it was just like a long form conversational, not really about anything. And the basic premise was that if you talk to anybody for 3 hours, you're going to get something out of it. What I didn't realize that is, if you're not Joe Rogan, asking people to listen to a 3-hour conversation that doesn't actually have a topic is a hard sell. But in the beginning, I would go through and we'd have these long 2.5, 3-hour conversations, and I'd go through and I'd cut out, like if there was a little bit too much silence, I'd cut that out. If it was I say a lot, I would cut all those out. And it sounded relatively natural, but it didn't sound like me. And as I'm embarking on this newer endeavor with IDRYB, I'm not looking to be this polished speaker, because that's not who I am.
Mhm.
And I'm okay. That's why I don't heavily edit the main conversation. I'll edit the clips for time, but I don't feel like if I need a minute, like when you made the point about putting entertainment first, taking a second to sit on that and think about what you're saying, and have the time, take the time to think about it the way I want to think about it, and respond in the way that I want to respond. When you're writing, you have all the time in the world, and when you're talking, you don't. But as well as as much as I'd love for this channel to blow up, and the podcast to be huge, and me be doing all these other things. I just did my first live stream last week,
Mhm.
just talking about like current events and stuff.
Mhm.
And so I'm bringing all that stuff up, and all of it is stuff that I want to write about, but they're just all these ideas just kind of disconnected, and they are connected, but I don't have the through line yet. So when I eventually do write that book, it is I'm certain I'm going to be in the same position. Like, all right, well, my whole life has been leading up to this point, and now I got it out there. Now what?
Now what?
And I mean, it's actually a very common thing with bands where they'll the debut album, they might put out an EP here and a demo there, but their first album, that's like the culmination of everything they've been working on. And so that's why sophomore albums can
Mm.
oftentimes not be as good, or at least critically not as good, because it's a much shorter time frame in which you're drawing upon, and all that stuff.
Mm.
So, did you go, did you publish independently, or did you go through an established publisher?
So yeah, so I self-published. I self-published my book, which is like a really, like within the last few years, it's been a lot easier for authors to like publish their work.
How so?
Well, because there's so many, you don't have to go through the traditional publishing route anymore. In fact, a lot of people don't really like that method anymore, because they kind of lose control of their book, their product, their idea. And if it doesn't sell well, or if the book sales kind of drop off, then the publisher will kind of just like drop you and just like move to the next thing. So it definitely offers you a lot more control. Like, for me, like I wrote like a coming of age young adult fantasy to like a dark post-apocalyptic humor to this like, cultural superhero anti-hero story. So I'm just kind of like all over the place right now.
And so meaning like a publisher would kind of want you to find your niche and,
they would
gotcha.
they would say write the sequel,
Right, gotcha.
write the second one, write the third one, which I mean is like a proven way to be successful, writing a bunch of sequels. Like if you have like 4 parts, if I have like the Tower of Blue part 2, part 3, part 4, statistically like I will do better. Like they will all start to sell a lot better. So there's nothing wrong with that, but it is like you lose some of that control.
Yeah, it should be your choice of
Yeah.
what you want to read.
You
And
just
not
wanna
saying
write about
that
it.
there's anything wrong with publishers having that. Obviously, they have their not agenda, but they have their job
Yeah.
to sell books and all that. But and then you also get to keep. Obviously, you don't have to pay. Off the top.
Publishers like to print and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you self-publish, you kind of have to like foot the bill.
Mhm.
So like I'm paying for like the printing and but they put you in stores. Like you can find my book on like Amazon and Goodreads and Barnes and Noble and everywhere books are sold. So they kind of take care of that stuff. But no matter what, whether you're self-published or if you are published by one of like the big guys, you still have to promote yourself. And I'm sure you can attest to the same thing, whether it's writing, podcasting, YouTube, whatever it is. Promoting yourself and getting the word out is like the hardest part. It's like this what we're doing, like the whole podcast part for you, I'm sure is probably like the easiest part of your job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not to say that it's easy. It's just to say that marketing yourself and getting the word out is so incredibly hard. And you and I are both we're creatives. My creative outlet is writing. Your creative outlet is podcasting. So marketing does not come easy
Right.
to us because our brains are focused on like the creative aspect. We want to create like the content. That is like where our brains go to. And then all this other stuff is like way hard. Like,
and it's frustrating. It's frustrating as a smaller channel. I get so many like the only comments I really get are from these small time SEO people who are like, oh, your content is great, but for X amount of dollars I can get you this, that, and it's like,
yep.
I'm aware of people who do SEO, and they're like this one guy. I actually just tried it out just because he said $30 and we put you out and put your channel out in all these different areas, and I got like 2 subscribers out of it. But I just wanted to see like is like, I don't know if are you familiar with Fiverr, the website Fiverr?
Yeah. Yep.
Where you can basically get anyone to do anything for
$5.
Yeah, and
$5.
Exactly $5. And the prices that you see are definitely affected by where people are in the world. But like if I'm at the if I'm gonna go and spend money for SEO on my channel and my all that stuff, then I want it done right. And I'm not gonna compromise how well I'm being promoted to just because it's cheaper. And if I can't afford that yet, then I'll just wait until I can and make sure it's done right. It's like I used to my dad has a private laser tattoo removal practice. And so when we started, I made the website, and I got them started on like Instagram and Facebook and stuff. But then, as it took off, we hired somebody who legit knows how to do this stuff. And they're not cheap. So it's tempting when these people are like, oh, I can get you this, that, and the other for this cheap price. It's like, well, I would love to just have a few more people. And it's like, once you hit a certain milestone, then it gets much easier to get to the next one, and so on and so forth. And I'm sitting at like 120 subscribers right now, which is not anything. But if you can get up to like 1,000, then that may, the road to 5,000 is much easier. And once you're above 10K, then you're considered like a legit channel. And nothing, nothing against you or any of the other authors I've had so far, but it would be nice to have names in the title that people already want to come and hear what that person has to say.
Right.
And as much as I appreciate the people who watch because they like what I do, the name of the game is getting clicks from people who don't know, and people aren't clicking on me. That's
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Hey,
eventually,
it's got to start somewhere. I'm sure like Joe Rogan started with 120 followers. So
yeah, that's
also,
actually good.
Yeah, and also like a trick that I learned where because you said 120 followers and you said that's like not a lot. Think of a room filled with 120 people. It's a lot of people. If you were just like in a room, like in an like an auditorium or something like that, and there were 120 people, they were all there to just like watch you, you'd be like, wow, there's a lot of people. Or if you were giving like a speech or something in front of 120 people, it's a lot of people. So
yeah, well, if they would all like and comment, then yeah, I'd be doing great.
Yeah,
but again, that's not really how YouTube works.
Yeah, that's also true. But I feel like, and not to say that this is how you are, but I feel like if you just focus on you, as in like you, me, like whoever wants to achieve something, if you just focus on like putting out stuff that is good and interesting, like people will, like if you build it, they will come,
yeah,
kind of thing. So I can understand like the getting frustrated when you don't get like a lot of followers, because the same thing happens to me. Like I think I have like 1,400 followers or something like that. I mean, a lot of that is like me following people and then following me, or and then like, you post something and then people just drop off. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But it's like people that like what you're doing, that want to see what you're doing, they're going to stick around. They're going to follow you. Like you can't like, like scrape and like claw these people back. Like that's right. Not.
Nor would I want to. I'd want people here who are believe in what I'm doing and believe in me as a person. I don't, there's all these like, especially on Reddit, there's all these sub for sub subreddits where you can just go in and just get empty subs, and like I'd much rather have 100 people who are here for it than 1,000 people and only 5% of those people are engaging with the content. That I feel, I don't know exactly how the algorithm works, but I feel like the percentage of engagement is slightly higher than just the sheer number of people. I mean, just off the top of my head, like the Young Turks as a channel, they have like 5 million subscribers, but their videos only get like 40,000 views, and that is not a good look. And what does it say? It says that at one point they had a bigger following, and it's not just because somebody stops watching your videos doesn't mean they automatically unsubscribe. So most likely out of those 5 million people, about 5 million of them are people who used to watch the Young Turks and just scroll through when they're going through their subscriptions and just don't watch the videos. So I saw how vapid that can be, and I'd much rather take the route of just being authentically myself and putting it out there. And I know that there are people who will enjoy this. I just don't know how to find them.
Yeah.
And that's like we said, that's the hard part.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you because I'm sure that there are lots of people who would really enjoy, the Night Howler, and people who like this conversation would also enjoy reading something like that. But
How do you get to them?
the hard part is finding them. That is the struggle of the modern day content creator, I guess you could say.
Yep, definitely. All right. Well, I mean, we've been going for about a little over an hour now, and I like to end off just we've talked about it, but if I can nail you down to one answer is you said that you want people who read this to take something away, and I understand that, or I think I understand that when you're saying that, you mean that it doesn't necessarily matter what they take away from it, but rather that there is something that they take away from it. But that being said, if you could narrow it down and you could, spoon feed a theme or a message from the Night Howler series, what would that be?
That message would be that somebody that thinks differently than you, or if they think in a way that you don't agree with, it doesn't make them your enemy. And you could both be working towards the same goal. You just come from different places. You have different backgrounds, or you're different ages. You see the world differently, but that doesn't mean that you can't work together for a common goal. And I hope that when people finish the series, because that's really when the whole message will come together. I hope that when they finish the series, that they can take away that just because someone comes from a different time or looks at the world differently or thinks differently, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person, and it doesn't make you like a great person because you think differently, or you think that your way is the right way. So basically, just try not to be so quick to judge a book by its cover.
Right.
Basically.
There you go. And I think that's a another important piece of like I said, that's my message a lot, is that discourse and all that stuff, exactly what you said. But maybe I don't necessarily emphasize enough that what you said about just because you have a certain view, it's not just that you should respect people who think differently, but you also should be humble in the sense that you think what you think, and you might be you think what you think because you think it's right. If you thought it was wrong, you wouldn't think it. So we all think we're right about everything we think, and there's stuff we don't know, and there's things that we think we're right about. But the fact that we could be wrong, and even if we're not, that it doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you more moral or anything like that. I think that's also an important part of my message as well. And very well said. Very well said.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for gracing the platform. It's very cool to learn about the Night Howler.
Thanks for having me.
If you other books, websites, socials, anything like that, if you want to plug, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's at ELO Author, which is just ELO Author. That is also my TikTok, unfortunately. And also Facebook, same thing, ELO Author. And I have my website, which is just my name, Eric Locsh. I guess they can find the spelling on your video, because my last name can be a little hard to spell. But it's just my name, and it has all my books, everything that I put out. And if you sign up for my website to get my emails and stuff, if you sign up, you get a free copy, a free ebook of The Tower of Blue. So you just put in your email, free book comes your way, and then just become part of the community.
Awesome. Who doesn't love a free anything?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Very, very cool. Oh, again, thank you. This was a really cool conversation. I I didn't really know what we were getting into. And
Me neither.
I wasn't sure, like I said, I wasn't sure how much of that tongue-in-cheekness was a part of it. And I'm happy to hear that it is a part of it, but that, you know, the message is a much more substantial one. So I think that if people can receive the message that you intend, I think this can really be something helpful to just the way we are in society. And again, this is something that I talk about all of the time, and just being able to communicate effectively with other people. And you're opening another avenue. So great
Yeah.
job.
Thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, I will have all of that stuff linked below. So please go buy the book. You can get a free one, sign up for his email list, and check out everything else at it's just ericlocsh.com.
ericlocsh.com. Yep.
And again, the link is right below, and the spelling is literally right below you right now. That I'm trying to think if I had any other questions. Oh, and then yeah, so the free book is Tower of Blue. That was the first one you wrote. And then you have what's up with Possum Stew?
Possum
you write
yeah, that's available on my website as well. It's just like a one-off novella.
Right.
Not connected to anything, but if you want to read something that's like funny and ridiculous and a weird premise of a chef at the
Gordon Ramsay and The Walking Dead
in the apocalypse, then you'll probably get like a kick out of it.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, and you have a great day. All right. So wasn't that interesting? I didn't I didn't realize that it was not a comic or a graphic novel, obviously. But I like the idea that it's framed this way. And specifically because there is I think there's a specific audience for comics and for graphic novels that doesn't really cross over, I guess is the word. And you know, this same story might not have the type of appeal if it was in that format. And again, because this isn't just a typical superhero story where, you know, you have your origin story, and then you have your bad guy, and you have this and that, and it's a different type of story just set on the backdrop of these crime fighters. And I think that's really cool. And you know, why I think that is valuable is finding ways to get out a message where, you know, people may not be hearing exactly what they want to hear, but they're still able to take in the information. That is something that again is, like we talk about every week, it's lost among people. And not hiding, but burying, I don't know what, you know what I'm trying to say. Putting the message in this context makes it much less abrasive. It seems like this would be a lot easier for somebody to see what the message is, who, if it was just like a nonfiction book, they would just toss it aside because they don't already agree. I think finding ways to embed messages of virtue and values and things like that in broader culture is important. I think without pop culture, these types of ideas can get lost and become very esoteric. And, you know, if you're not studying moral philosophy, and if you're not studying, you know, the history of politics, if you're all of these higher level things, then you're just not going to know about stuff. And so the ability to take higher level ideas and not dumb them down, but just present them in a more palatable and easier to not only digest, but easier to resonate with, by, whether it's the characters themselves or the events. The idea of a superhero is something that we're all familiar with. The idea of the boomer versus the zoomer, that's something that we're all familiar with. And so whatever message that you can take from this comes from a place of understanding rather than a place of being presented a brand new, a brand new template of information or a brand new template of belief and value systems that flies in the face of what you already believe. Now, what you believe might be wrong and might be bad, and you might need to change your mind about certain things. But again, if it's not presented in a way that you're making that choice, then you're not actually going to change your mind. You might say that you agree with this, that, and the other, but if the concept of really being persuasive doesn't come from beating people over the head with things. It comes from making good arguments and being charismatic in the way that you do it. And I think this is a perfect example and a very unique delivery system for that. And we didn't really get too much into the specific politics that he has personally, and that he is trying to represent in the story. But that was a conscious decision, because I don't necessarily want anybody to feel some type of way, one way or the other about this because of a political message. That's the whole point, is that this isn't an in-your-face political thing. And so I don't know what his politics are. I don't know what the parallels of politics and culture are in the Night Howler series. But I can tell you that regardless of what you think, this will be a commentary on that. And if it is, it either is something that politically, if you align with, you can see that and use that as again, just another delivery system for your own self to use in conversations in your daily life. And if it's a message that you don't initially agree with, it allows you to see it in a way that is not combative and maybe entertain it. And it doesn't necessarily have to change your mind about anything, but being able to take in the information and bypass your biases is something that I think is really, really important when it comes to changing minds and persuading people. And again, not that it didn't seem like Eric was trying to change anyone's mind per se, but we're talking about these ideas of one person having one idea, other person having another idea, and thinking that they're wrong just because it's different. A common theme on this show. This again seems like a very, very good way to deliver that message. It's reminiscent of as an atheist and having very religious parents, it can be difficult to talk about these things. And like, I don't even bother with my mom because we don't have that type of relationship. But my dad and I will get into these things. And, obviously we vehemently disagree on the reality of the universe. That's a big thing. And early on, some of our conversations would be rather contentious and it would get heated, and I didn't really get anywhere. And I eventually I was watching for a while now the call-in YouTube show, The Atheist Experience, with Matt Dillahunty. And it's him and a co-host, a guest co-host, different every week. And it's just a call-in show. Call in, tell us what you believe and why. And as an atheist, it's a great platform because it's not trying to, it's not trying to browbeat any type of ideas into you. It's letting you present what you think. and then the hosts will be able to engage with that in that way. And because there are other people calling in other than myself and my dad, I made a playlist of some calls that I thought would be helpful to our conversation. And I was absolutely right in that sense that when we're talking about somebody else's beliefs, it was much easier for him not to feel attacked, that I was attacking his personal beliefs when I'm simply engaging with what somebody else is saying. And so finding finding effective communication is not something that is very simple a lot of times, but if you can, it can be super effective. And I think this might be an example of that. So definitely check out not only the Night Howler, but Tower of Blue. You can get that one for free. And Possum Stew is also available. Gordon Ramsay in The Walking Dead Apocalypse. That is an appetizing idea, pun intended. Again, all that stuff is linked below. Thank you again for tuning into another episode of I Didn't Read Your Book. I am Lutch, your host. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on socials at IDRYB Lutch. That's IDRYBLUTCH, IDRYB Lutch. And if you'd like to support the channel and help me grow, I would really appreciate that. I've got my Venmo, PayPal, and Bitcoin addresses linked below. But you don't have to do that. This is free content. If you just want to sit at home and think about how great this is, that's cool too. But please at least give it a like. Come on, it's free. It's free. And share this with somebody who you think would be interested in the Night Howler. I'm sure you know somebody. I'm sure you know somebody who would be all about this. Let them know. Let them know. It's this isn't some huge book where it's a burden that, oh, now they got to spend all this money on this huge thick book. It's a short book and it's a short story. So there's no reason why, if somebody isn't into this type of stuff, that they wouldn't want to do it. So share this with somebody, share a clip of this with somebody, do something. Come on, I'm doing all this for you. Just help me out. But thank you. Tuning in is plenty. And I do appreciate that. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next one. And when that drops, Wednesday morning at 10, every Wednesday morning. Look out for clips all week, and I will see you then. Peace.